Hey guys, welcome back to Project Geekology. My name is Dakota, and I'm joined as always with
Anthony.
And today we're doing our third installment of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Yes, Spider-Man 3. It's not the most beloved film of all time, but I think we have some positive things to say. I think we have some negative things to say. And we're going to get into all of that and more as the show goes on. But before we get into anything, Anthony, what have you been up to?
Oh man, I feel like I've had a good bit that I've been working on and doing. I know that you saw that I recorded a Overwatch 2 episode. It's a mini episode because we actually have a full episode for Overwatch out there, and the mini-sode is to kind of catch people up on the changes between the first and the second Overwatch.
Okay, cool.
And I mean, there's a good bit of change, but it's really change on the PvP side. I mean, we could probably do an update when they eventually come out with the PvE stuff.
I can't wait for that, honestly, because Overwatch is so ripe for that kind of content. Like a story-based campaign for Overwatch would be so good. Or like, you know, an individual character by character campaign. Like it could be like short, a couple hours for Genji or a couple hours for Diva, you know, and altogether these little storylines make up a greater whole of the Overwatch universe. I think that would be so cool. That would be so fun. But I'm looking forward to seeing whatever Blizzard does come out with for that. But I do look forward to listening to your minisode. I haven't checked it out yet. But when you said that you were releasing a minisode, I think you said it like the night before it came out. I was like, oh, really? We recorded a minisode? Yeah, so that was pretty fun. So I can't wait for that. But what else have you been up to?
Also, last weekend I saw Suzume. Really enjoyed it. I liked it. I mean, I really like Your Name and Weathering with You, so I knew that I was going to really enjoy this movie, and I surely did.
Yeah, so Makoto Shinkai, we did a podcast on Your Name a while back. We loved it. It's such a good movie. It's one of my favorites. I think it's in my top 10 all-time movies. And I love Makoto Shinkai's work. I only saw Weathering with You once, but I remember really liking it. And I also saw Suzume, I think on Saturday. So a couple days ago from me. What did you think?
I liked it. I thought it was really interesting, and it felt so much like his work. You know, like you could tell, I feel like when a certain director has like a stamp that they put in their movies, like, you know, it's them. Like you're like, man, this feels like, you know, maybe like Guillermo del Toro, like, you know, when it's one of his films because it feels
you don't have to necessarily know like who the director is to like know who the director is in some movies, you know, like Tim Burton has that feel, Tarantino to a lesser degree has that feel. There's no mistaking a Wes Anderson film, but
absolutely.
Yeah, so when it comes to like Makoto Shinkai, it's an anime. So I mean, if you're not very versed in anime and you've probably seen Your Name before, it'll probably be like, oh, this is kind of like Your Name. But it's a unique story, a unique world, and I think he did a really, really good job. I'd love to do an episode on it eventually. Maybe
yes, I want to do more. I want to do one on Weathering with You, and definitely on this film.
We should. You know what we should also cover, because we've covered it in the past, is Mandalorian.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, we've done a season 1 and a season 2. Correct?
We've done a season 1 and a season 2. The season 3 finale just finished up as of recording the day prior.
Right.
And so I'm all caught up on that. I watched it yesterday, and of course...
I'm all caught up too.
Right. Of course, and... You know, I knew that they weren't going to let us down and that they were going to finish off strong, so...
Right. I think I mostly enjoyed it. You know, I think overall the season I mostly enjoyed. There were some hiccups that I had, but I'd love to get into it in more depth. So maybe the next podcast we do, Anthony, you want to do Mando season 3?
Yeah.
Come on, Mando season topical. 3. Let's do it. Yeah, I'd love that. Because I think there's so much that we can dig into with that, and I think we can get a nice juicy podcast out of that. So I don't want to prematurely, you know, give all of my opinions or your opinions to these wonderful listeners. Thank you again for following us. We ramble a lot, but we're happy that you're listening to us.
We love going down rabbit trails all the time. So pretty much, aside from making the Overwatch 2 minisode and watching Suzume, just a lot of gaming and watching The Mandalorian and working on some personal projects.
Nice.
What have you been up to, Dakota? I've seen that you've been knocking out some videos on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I did a couple of videos. I think only one video since the last time we recorded, but I did a short video. It's not short. It's like 13 minutes of My Neighbor Totoro. The 35th anniversary just passed, and I recently saw the movie in theaters like a month ago, and I really was just struck by like how good it holds up, you know? Like, I've seen it a couple times. It's not my favorite Ghibli movie, it's not my favorite Miyazaki movie, but it's a solid film, and the more that I have watched it, the more that I appreciate it. And I started paying attention to the details in the background. There's a couple calendars that pop up like pretty prominently throughout the thing, so I was just like, hey, I could do a timeline video on My Neighbor Totoro. And in so doing, I started studying the film, and I found out, or I think I found out, this is a theory of mine that I dive into in the video, which you can check out in the show notes. I think I found out that there's two sequences in My Neighbor Totoro that were flipped around to better fit the narrative. But you can tell that because the calendars don't match up. One calendar is, like the first calendar in the film that pops up is in June, and the second one is in May. So I think that the two scenes are flipped around, and I give my evidence and stuff like that. So I think it's a cool video. I love Studio Ghibli, and actually going down that rabbit hole, so to speak, My Neighbor Totoro helped me appreciate the film a lot more. So that was a really nice experiment for me. As far as what else I've been up to, I've been really diving into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. I know you saw the movie at like a special fan event, right?
Right. So I saw it at a early screening.
Nice.
So the weekend before it actually released, and man, I absolutely enjoyed it. And I'm actually diving into the prequel stuff too. You already listened to the audiobook for, I think, The Road to Neverwinter?
Yeah, and I also today I finished there's another prequel book called The Druid's Call.
Right. I'm excited
Johnston.
to get into that one too.
Yeah, I actually found it really strong. I don't think E.K. Johnston is, I don't want to say she's a bad writer. She's a solid writer that consistently puts out good books, but I think a lot of times I feel like other authors could possibly do it better. So she has like a really good track record with like pumping out decent, good novels, and this is one of them. And there are instances where I'm like a little bit more critical because I've read a lot of her other Star Wars stuff, so I know her writing style. Mm-hmm. And that kind of like trips me up a little bit. But the actual story behind how Doric, the druid in the movie, got her powers as a druid, how she can turn into an owlbear, like what her backstory is, and a tiefling, it's all really interesting stuff, and I think she kind of knocked it out of the park, so I want to give her credit for that. So I'm looking forward to, maybe someday making a Dungeons and Dragons timeline video, kind of like I did with the Avatar universe.
Woo! I mean, like what would you be basing it off? Because that is a rabbit hole.
Okay. Yes.
Itself.
No, that's too much. Yeah. No.
That's a lot. That's we're talking about stuff 40, going back to like the 70s.
40-year history, 45 almost. Yeah. So I don't think I would be doing that. I'm saying Dungeons and Dragons the movie, and it's different parts. So I think there's 2 novels and there's a prequel comic, and then the movie. So I would go into where everything fits within that. But
I picked up the comic actually.
Oh yeah, I haven't picked it up yet.
Yeah, I picked it up.
And have you started reading it or?
No, not yet. I'm trying to get through the book before I start kind of like hopping around. But it's not going to be that long of a read. It's not really all that big. But I saw it I was in Walmart and I saw it. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely buying this.
Pick that up.
Yeah, so, it was like a couple $dollars off, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take this.
Yes, might as well. So yeah, I'm really excited about diving into the Dungeons and Dragons world. What I find really interesting about the film, and I don't think we talked about it on a previous podcast yet, so I think I'm good to say this, but the world that they base this on isn't just some random world that, because with Dungeons and Dragons, you can create your own world and your own characters, and you just follow the rules as much as the rule books will say. This is based on the pre-established lore and world of Faerun that is part of the Forgotten Realms timeline of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. So it's a really in-depth, well-explored world that they actually dive into it. And I didn't know that. I like playing Dungeons and Dragons, but when I play it, it's usually not in the Faerun realm. It's usually just kind of like my own setting or whoever the dungeon master setting is.
Yeah, like my current campaign is in the Radiant Citadel and like the existing kind of multiverse. It's almost like very spacey.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I knew a little bit about the world within that movie for the video games. See, I hadn't played D&D back then, but there's Baldur's Gate, the games.
Okay, yeah.
And there's Neverwinter Nights, and there's also some Waterdeep game. And so I've experienced some of D&D in the video game world, but I never really experienced it in the actual role playing in Faerun. So it was pretty cool that when they were talking about it, I was like, oh man, like I kind of remembered this stuff because of those games.
Here. Yeah. So I think in the movie they definitely visit Neverwinter, and I think in the book that you're reading they visit Waterdeep, if I remember correctly. Oh no, it's the book that I read, Druid's Call. They visit Waterdeep.
Okay,
briefly.
Cool.
But anyway, so it's a living world that they created for their movie. And if you haven't seen Dungeons and Dragons, I would recommend it. I know the trailers didn't do it justice. It's a really fun film. I was telling my dad actually, because I was saying the other day that there's not enough movies that feel like The Mummy. It used to be a thing in the 90s and the early 2000s that Hollywood blockbusters had a certain feel where it's like adventure but also humor, and you don't get that too much anymore. This had that feel.
I feel like there's just too many movies and even TV shows out there are trying to just fit a specific formula where it's known as a comedy or it's known as an adventure. Like it fits within something, but this one really just felt like it was fun. You could tell that it was a fun movie to make. It looked like it was a fun time. Sure. And the thing that I really loved about this D&D movie was that it felt like a D&D session or a campaign, honestly.
Yeah.
Because you had the classes, you had the blunders, there's moments where they fail at stuff, dude. That I imagine that's rolling a nat 1, or you're rolling a 1, or you succeed, so you're rolling a 20, So that's what it really felt like, a D&D session when I'm watching it. And I think that they did a great job in putting that on screen. And I was actually reading, and I had seen some videos that while preparing for the movie, they played D&D. The cast.
It feels like it. It feels like it. Yeah.
Well, I knew for sure that Michelle Rodriguez has played D&D because I've seen her play in a session with the actor that plays Dustin in Stranger Things, with Jack Black, the actress that I forgot her name. I think it's Karen in Daredevil. She does a lot of D&D stuff, but I had seen Michelle Rodriguez. She plays D&D and stuff. So
Deborah Ann Wool.
Yes,
that's her name. Yeah, and also her co-star in the Fast and Furious movies, Vin Diesel is a huge D&D guy.
Yes,
so she kind of probably learned from him. So
he was also a WoW player.
Yes, yeah, it's fun when you I know Henry Cavill is also a WoW player, so it's fun getting those perspectives from people who you kind of revere as being these Hollywood stars just playing on your level. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, so I think, dude, Dungeons and Dragons, we can do a whole podcast on that.
Oh,
we got
absolutely.
all these ideas, guys. Suzume, Weathering with You, Mando season 2.
Thank you guys for listening to us plan our future episodes.
Yes, you guys are giving us so much content. Thank you. No, I also saw Mario, the Super Mario Bros.
Oh
movie.
Yeah, same. I actually liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed it.
It was cute. It was fun. It wasn't anything crazy. It didn't need to be a Pixar movie. It's a movie for kids. I do think it could have been a little bit better, or a little bit longer, a little meatier, or have some point other than eat your mushrooms. But it was a fun movie. I really enjoyed it. I would love a Luigi's Mansion movie.
Oh, man.
They kind of teased that a little bit.
They really did. Yeah, they really did. And they kind of had a Smash Bros moment in there too.
Yeah, well, we're definitely getting more of these movies now because this is the biggest animated film of all time. So prepare for 5 other Mario movies in the near future. Hey, it's another timeline for me, right? Anyway.
All right.
we should get started on our discussion of Spider-Man.
Alrighty,
3.
yes. Let's talk about Spider-Man 3, the best of the 3.
Turn the clock back to 2000. 2007? Yeah, 2007. I remember that year. I remember being in California and talking to kids who didn't like it. And I was just like, why? This is so good.
Yeah.
And then I found out, wait, the whole world doesn't like it. And I think it was hyped up for me a little bit because there was a brief period of time where my mom actually worked at Sony. She didn't work in the creative field, but she worked in the bootleg department, so she was constantly getting like certain screeners or stuff like that. And this was around the time that Spider-Man 3 was coming out, and it was the biggest movie of all time. It was the highest budgeted film ever, did excellent at the box office, but it was pretty critically panned, and fans don't remember it too favorably. So maybe today we will give it its time to shine, because there are some really good stuff in here.
There is. I will give it that. There are some moments in it that I would say that you can't give it 100% hate. I do understand a lot of the criticisms of the film. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of it kind of seems like a jumbled mess at some points, and it feels like they're trying to fit too many storylines into one movie. But I think that they were trying to set up for something major like in the future. But I think that after this, they like cooled off on the notion of having a Spider-Man 4, because I know it was planned.
Yeah, there's an infamous tweet that you can find on Sony's Twitter feed. It's like an old tweet from like I think 2008 or 2009, where it was just like the Spider-Man 4 logo, and it was scheduled for a certain time, but then the film was clearly scrapped, obviously, in favor of the Andrew Garfield duology. But where do you think that the film shined? Like, for you, like what worked for you?
I like the strife in that development between Peter and Harry Osborn. Like, he was super sinister in this movie. He was really... The way that he was like kind of playing Mary Jane and Peter, like it was almost like a chess game for him, and he was doing it pretty masterfully. And then when he kind of revealed that it was him, he was like, man, I got the upper hand on you.
Yeah, there's that whole plot between, it's like a love triangle between Mary Jane, Peter, and Osborn. And I think the scene where Harry loses his memory and he's in the hospital, and you just feel good about Peter and Mary Jane, meeting him there, and he's like my two best friends in the whole world. And you could tell this guy is clearly not all there, but you're happy that he's in the place that he's at because he's surrounded by people who care for him, and he's not going crazy at the moment,
Right, he's not obsessing over trying to take out Spider-Man.
Right. At the end of the second movie, we have Harry realize that he has his father's store of weapons and stuff so that he can start targeting Spider-Man. He injects himself with the Green Goblin serum so that he can have those heightened skills and stuff.
Right. I think, wasn't that an added scene in the director's cut? Because I don't remember that in the theatrical cut.
Yeah, actually, so we both watched the extended edition of Spider-Man 3. It adds a couple scenes, lengthens out a certain couple scenes, and that's one of them. And actually, you could tell that the CGI in that scene is unfinished. It's a little wonky if you give it like a cursory, if you give it more than a cursory glance, you'll notice that it's not all finished, or there's like strings attached to certain characters. Actually, there's a fight scene that they extended between Harry and Peter, and there's a couple scenes that you can see that were added in the extended edition where Peter and Harry are on strings, but that's only if you're looking for it. If you're not, then and you're just engrossed in the story, then all more power to you. But yeah, so when he loses that hate for Peter, like at the at the end of the first act, you love that. For a second, his friend's back. And Peter, all is well for Peter very briefly. So, but like you said, there's a lot that happens in this movie.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Right, because we get a black suit Spider-Man, and it's like they kind of took bits and pieces of different Spider-Man storylines and then storylines that they've made up and kind of try to make it it was almost like a hodgepodge of different things that happened. I liked the Sandman stuff, and I actually loved that added scene from the director's cut with the sandcastle.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It added more emotion to it.
It's a beautiful scene. Yeah,
it really
all the stuff,
was, yeah.
all the stuff with Sandman, most of the stuff I should say with Sandman are really good. I think the actor, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he does such a great job.
Thomas Hayden Church or Hayden Thomas Church, one of those.
Yes,
something church.
You're right. Actually, he lives in, or at least, as of like 5 years ago, he lived in my previous town in Westchester.
Oh, wow.
And I would see him every now and then at the local deli.
I think I remember you mentioning that to me.
Yeah, or not the deli. It was the diner that's like down the street from me, or it was down the street from me. But anyway, it's one of those things where he can like kind of tell when people notice him, and every now and then I just be like looking over, and he just like kind of like look down at his food. Anyway, let's move on. He did an excellent job. He did an excellent job with this character. That one scene where he like falls into like the molecule rearranging sand pit sort of thing, and he gets his molecules rearranged for whatever reason is so gorgeous. It's the CGI is starting to look a little dated, but it still holds up as just such a beautiful scene.
Right, like how his cells kind of become crystallized and like turn into sand. It's a really interesting scene, and I always find it funny in scenes like this, and that they happen all the time, where somebody falls into something and the sensor goes off, and they're like, oh no man, it's just a bird, or it's a bug that fell in. It's like, bro, like why don't y'all like check? Because I'm pretty sure that a human is heavier than a bird, and there's going to be some more weight going on there.
It's also unlikely, if they're doing tests to see what happens to the sand or whatever, that there's some sort of video on the pit as they do their thing. Right?
Yeah, like there should be something like a video camera monitoring that there isn't something in there, or that something is not going wrong. Right. It's almost like with the last film in Spider-Man 2, where your boy doesn't do any of these tests beforehand, but like he's like, all right, we're gonna do it right when all these people are here.
Yeah, we're gonna create a sun in my living room. Thank you for coming. So I love that. I love the Sandman stuff. I think his story is strong. I get where he's coming from
with the past.
His connection with the past. I like that they were able to believably rewrite Peter's history a little bit, so that they were able to inject the Flint Marko into the death of Ben Parker.
Right. And it was believable, especially with the way that they established him from the beginning of the movie, that he wasn't somebody that was just gonna outright coldly kill somebody, that it was just an accident in the moment. And it was believable for Uncle Ben to want to talk somebody down because he senses that person has good in their heart, And
absolutely.
So I really like the Sandman stuff, and the Harry Osborn stuff was already establishing, even from the first film, there's always that kind of love triangle there. How do you feel about the Eddie Brock stuff with Topher Grace?
So Topher Grace, I think, did as good as he could do with what he was given, and I don't think it was a bad role, but it was a truncated role. Like he was only given a third of the movie's attention. if that. I think more attention was given to both of the other antagonists of the film. But I liked his. I think it's a natural way to introduce the character, at least for the most part, where he is just trying to get ahead in the world, so he starts taking shortcuts. This happens every day. People cheat, people lie, so that they can get ahead in the world, and it's unfortunate, but we've met people like that. We've probably done it ourselves at some point in our lives, and he is that character distilled into just like kind of the worst part of us, as I guess we can be towards like business and being honest individuals, and you hate him. You're meant to hate this character. Right. And even though Peter goes down such a dark path at this point in the movie, you still feel that like righteous indignation for Peter and the work that he's put into the Bugle at this point. So you want him to put this guy down, even though it's wrong. You know that the hero doesn't, or it shouldn't do that. Like, that's not something Superman would ever do at the Daily Planet. Even if if Jimmy Olsen does this to Clark Kent's not going to get retaliation in the same way that Peter Parker did in this instance. And that's partly to do with the symbiote that kind of heightens his emotional states.
Right. Some of those moments, I know that it was cringe to a lot of people, but I'm not gonna lie, like, I laughed at the moments where he's just like kind of in those dark times, and like, remember he like looks in the mirror and like fixes his hair like to make himself look emo.
Yeah.
And then the dancing scene freaking killed, bro. See, people groan to it, but I laugh to it every time because, I mean, it's corny, but ridiculous. It's so funny, dude. It makes me laugh. I'm like, but like, dude, it's a comic book movie, and that's how these movies have been from the start, and it feels so much so like a comic book, just like it's not gonna happen in real life. And so it was funny to me. Like, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I know that the tone of the movie takes a drastic shift at that point, but it's one of those scenes that I think a lot of people have learned to, begrudgingly enjoy. At first it was like, oh, this is so disgusting, what is he doing? But I think a lot of people nowadays appreciate it more, just because at the same time as cringy as it is, you have to, and this, I'm talking about the whole movie at this point, in comparison to what we have nowadays, where you get like, the MCU has this issue where it gets untested directors or TV directors to do big budget superhero films, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of movies that could be a lot better if they had a better director. I think the Spider-Man movies, the Homecoming trilogy, could be a lot better with a different director. Sam Raimi is one of those directors that's been around for a long time, even before the Spider-Man trilogy. He knows what he's doing behind the camera, and you can tell that in pretty much every shot, whether it's a CG shot or whether it's just a framing shot of New York City and, Spider-Man swinging above. There's one scene that was cut in the original movie, I think it was cut, I don't remember it in the theatrical cut, that really brings this to life. You see the scene starts with Peter like brooding in his bedroom, and it's just like a silent scene, no talking or anything, but the way the camera is utilized in that scene tells you exactly what you need to know. The camera starts to pin, like he looks at his closet as he's like brooding and he's angry, and the camera pans over to the closet slowly, and it dials into the suitcase, and then Peter goes into the suitcase and opens it up, and what you see is the black suit, Spider-Man suit. And if you look closely, you'll actually see the suit like going up and down as if it's breathing, and it's just like, wow, this is cool. Like, why did they take this out? I mean, I know it doesn't make that much sense, but the camera work, the actual directorial like feel of it is so present, and it changes the whole mood of that scene, because it's not just a shot of Peter and then a shot of the closet and then a shot of the briefcase. It's one shot, and they do it so well. It's really cool.
Peter has a lot going on in this one, and it's not just these three antagonists. He has a struggle going on with Mary Jane also, and some of it I would say yes, it's him. But there's a lot on her end that really just doesn't help. And she creates a lot of strife because she's not communicating with Peter Parker. You know, she's got stuff going on. She's in Broadway. She gets booted out of the play, but she never tells Peter this. And when Peter's trying to, like, you know, tell her about, you know, this, and this, like, she knew what she was getting into when she started to date Peter Parker. She knew that Spider-Man was going to be Spider-Man. And, you know, she knew that he's going to be somebody that's very popular, very well known. And so when he tries to relate with her on specific things, she like starts to pull back and get angry at him, which I understand. Sometimes people don't want solutions. They just want to be heard. But
Sure.
she doesn't communicate this stuff with him. And it really creates, for me, unnecessary strife between both of them. I'm not saying unnecessary, that's unnecessary in the movie, because it happens in real life. It's to me, I'm like watching this movie now as an adult, I'm like, you need to talk to this guy. He doesn't know what you're doing, what's going on in your head, and you can't expect him to read your mind. You need to speak your mind and be like, hey, look, this is what's going on right now in my life. And then, you know, maybe after that, if he tries to fix stuff, then I'd understand why she'd be upset. But he's trying to help her out through something, but he doesn't know where she is, you know. He tries to ask her, like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And she shuts him out.
That's a good point. She does do a really terrible job of, you know, kind of expressing how she's truly feeling. But there is a lot of times throughout the movie where Peter assumes she's feeling a certain way.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's where I get sometimes people want to be heard and not have solutions thrown at him, and he does that. He tries to relate sometimes, like, you know, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on, because this happens as Spider-Man, where it, you know, and maybe in those moments where he might need to just listen rather than speak. But she should have maybe spoken to him about what's going on, especially in the moments when he tried to say, like, hey, you know, what's going on? It's obvious that something's going on, and she shuts him out, you know?
I like what you said earlier about there's a lot that Peter's going through in the movie, and I'm thinking about it now, and I think that's partly why the movie feels so jumbled. It's not just the three, like, villains that he has to face. It's not just Venom, Green Goblin, and Sandman. He has a lot of personal issues that he's currently going through as well. We talked about the Mary Jane issue. We have Harry Osborn coming out of his, you know, dilemma, and he's trying to totally ruin Peter's life. We have
Eddie Brock that's trying to take the staff job that he's kind of been working towards.
He's taking, and then we have the realization that Ben's killer is still out there, and then on top of that, he has a symbiote that has you know, like, dropped on his lap literally, and now he's trying to balance all this with trying to get some answers from his science professor. You know, like, there's a lot that's going on in this guy's life, and it's kind of frustrating because we know that humans aren't supposed to handle all that emotion all at once. You know, that's a lot of really negative and just hectic things happening in this one poor guy's life. Also, like, when it comes to, like, his relationship with his aunt, I think that, you know, he thinks she wants a certain thing from him that she doesn't necessarily want. You know, she doesn't want him to be a killer. She doesn't want him to know that the person who killed Ben is, like, out of the picture or stop suffering, whatever. So I think he's just all over the place in this movie, and that's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Was it this movie or the last movie that he tells her about the reality that he wasn't at the library on that night that Uncle Ben gets killed? That
was the second movie.
Okay.
That was the second movie. So she's already had that time to, like,
to
process that. But yeah. Oh, and on top of that, you know, we have Gwen Stacy, you know, who's coming in to muddle things with with Peter's relationship. Dude, there's so much that happens in this movie. I don't even think we can talk about it all.
I think that Bryce Dallas Howard does a really good job at playing a Gwen Stacy.
I really like her performance. Yeah. What I find funny is that it wasn't until Peter Parker saved Gwen Stacy, the daughter of the commissioner of the police force, that he gets offered the keys to the city. He's been doing this for a couple years at this point, but it's not until he saves the daughter of the of Commissioner Stacy that he gets the keys to the city. And I just feel that that's a really funny, just point.
Yeah, because he had been doing it for a good while up until that point.
Yeah. Do you feel he was acting in the moment when he got that Spider-Man kiss on stage from Gwen Stacy? Or who do you think? Was that for Peter Parker or was that for Spider-Man?
I believe it was for Spider-Man.
Just for the show of it.
I believe that it was just for the show of it. Believe in the fact that Peter Parker really does have this deep caring and love for Mary Jane, that he wouldn't knowingly do that. Like, that's just not him. That's not something that he would do.
But I also think, on that point, throughout the entire movie, I think they do a really good job of trying to express that the line between Peter and Spider-Man is very blurred within his own life. And I think that the popularity of being Spider-Man has clearly gotten to his head at this point. You brought it up yourself, where he was trying to give her all these pointers of how to deal with fame. People are going to be asking you for pictures left and right, blah, blah, blah.
Right, yeah.
I think clearly the fame had gotten to him at that point, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but he wasn't capable of making good decisions for his personal relationships in those moments because of that.
Right, and so that back and forth between him and Mary Jane ends up with him getting into this very serious fight with Harry Osborn. And I think that was a pretty good fight. There was a
Which
lot
fight?
that seemed to be on that line. Oh, that moment where he kind of comes out, he plays Mary Jane and Peter, and he's like, "Oh, I'm the guy that Mary Jane's seeing.
I'm the other guy."
Yeah,
dude. Oh man.
That's what I was saying. He's super sinister in this film, and he's playing chess in this instance,
Yeah.
And so when Peter finally confronts him, that one line that he "Oh, look at little Goblin Jr. Are you gonna cry?"
Yeah. I love the scene in the diner where he's confronting Peter, and he's like, "I'm the other guy, Pete." And he's trying to act all you're gonna have to deal with this, be a man, blah blah blah. But then Peter walks out, and the host goes, "How's your pie?" And he goes, "So good." And it's such a drawn out, just he's savoring this moment. He has wanted to hurt Peter for a long time. Homeboy was lost in the sauce.
He was having too much fun with that. He gets beaten up pretty badly by Peter, and he's left scarred because he gets blown up by the pumpkin bombs.
Yeah.
He tries to throw one at Peter, and Peter whips it right back at him.
What I find funny about the back room in the Osborn mansion is that when he finds it at the end of the second movie, Norman Osborn had meticulously purposely spaced out pumpkin bombs on 5 different glass shelves just because it looked nice. That was his decorating.
Hey man, he had to decorate his lair, to make it look nice.
How do I make this place look evil?
We had never really talked about it, but I really think how they made them, it looked really cool.
The pumpkin bombs.
They look, you could tell that they gave you the vibes of kind of how they looked in the comics, but updated, and just the glow of it looked really cool. Yeah,
I think pretty much all of the modernisms that they injected into these movies were fairly good. I like the Green Goblin suit, the original Green Goblin suit, more so than the Harry Osborn one. But I also like the fact that Harry had that snowboard goblin.
Right,
glider.
yeah,
that was cool.
his was cool. That was he was Hobgoblin.
Right.
Yeah. So
I don't think they ever say it, so I don't usually
Right.
say hobgoblin, but I think that was the original intent. But he's all we know is that he's Goblin Junior. So
Yeah, Goblin Jr. And then when in that fight, Harry's like, "Oh, you know, I protected you in high school. Now I'm gonna like beat you up," and like Peter's just like, "Oh, like oh, am I supposed to be scared?"
there's so much like
there's-
over dramatic moments in this movie.
And it was like, you know, there's a lot of camp, you know, going on in this film.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like for me, sometimes camp can be too much, and I'm like, oh gosh, it sucks. But sometimes like camp makes me laugh, you know, like it's just like depending on like how it's placed.
Sometimes camp is just the vibe that they're trying to go for.
Right,
And it's
right.
clearly this over the top story at this point that they were trying to go for. My favorite moment in this movie, besides maybe the Sandman scene, is when he's in the church, when Eddie Brock is going to church and he's talking to he's praying and he's like I can't even say it. He basically says, "God, please kill Peter Parker." And literally that moment, Peter happens to be in the bell tower right on top of him, and he's screaming at it at the top of his lungs to try and rip off the symbiote. And it's such a perfectly done scene. It's beautifully directed. Like, if you watch that scene, it's just masterfully done. Even though it's camp, it's so campy, but it's so good looking.
It really does look good, like the lighting, the mood, like what the way that they chose, like the cinematography. It really does look good. Yeah, that is one of the nicer looking shots in the movie.
And the movie isn't like lacking for nice shots either. Like,
Right, no, of course.
what I it's a very modern thing that movie making is currently going through right now, where lighting is secondary. It's almost like it's the style right now to do like more natural lighting in stuff, which is why, like, if you're watching a dark scene during the daytime, it's very difficult to like make out what's happening. Like, there's a couple, like, you know, there's the typical I think it's really started being noticed in the final season of Game of Thrones. There was that one episode that was all at nighttime, and it was so hard to see certain
Way
scenes.
too dark, dude.
But this has become like a kind of staple where, like, in dark scenes, people aren't well lit, but like in dark scenes in this movie, people are well lit. Like, they do such a good job with the lighting and the color grading, and this is almost like I don't know how, but this is something that we've lost along the way, and it's very rare for people to get that right nowadays for whatever reason. But I look forward to a time when we can go back to that. Like, another good example of this is if you've seen the trailers for the Little Mermaid that's coming out, the live action one. It's just so dark looking. Like, it just looks muddy and gray, and I'm so tired of it. I kind of just want vibrant movies. You know, I want to feel like I'm going to the movie theater when I sit down to watch a movie.
You know, I definitely get the realism, but we also have to remember that a lot of the stuff that we're watching isn't real. You know, like, there's no mermaids out there. There's a lot of these superhero movies that we're watching, these beings don't exist. Game of Thrones, that whole world doesn't exist. You want it to look real. You know, you want the vibe of the show to stick to the way it is.
Sure.
But let me tell you that the Battle of Winterfell would have been so much better if I could have seen a lot more.
Yeah, if you could see what's happening, it would
Like
be a
in the
lot
dark
better.
moment. So like a really good dark moment that obviously was dark for effect was when the Dothraki made that charge. I know that we're going off on a tangent, but this kind of goes back to what you're talking about, the lighting in this film. But like, you know, when the Dothraki charge and you're like, oh my gosh, you start seeing all the lights go out, and then like, you know, they start getting picked off. That's a perfect moment for that type of darkness, you know?
Right. This whole movie doesn't deal with that. Like, we spoke about the scene in the church. There's also there's a couple scenes where he's in the black suit and he's like on a building at night or like on some stoop or whatever, and he's well lit, like you could tell that it's night out, you can tell that it's dark, but the camera you never lose him in the mud on screen, like in the beginning when he's fighting, he's in his like normal Peter Parker attire, his cool youth pastor attire. He's swinging around like in that alleyway with Harry Osborn. It's nighttime, but you know what?
Right.
They're well lit. You could see every single movement they make, and it's so cool.
Right.
So
right.
I love stuff like that. I love going back to these movies and remembering, like, oh yeah, this is what movies used to look like. I hope we get more of that in the superhero genre, because I don't know. I can't have too many more at this point. If I have like any more, if I see 2 more Quantumanias in the near future, I think I'm done for a little bit. Like, that movie is so when it comes to color and lighting and spacing and all that, it just doesn't, it's not fun to look at.
It really, that one felt like a early 2000s low budget film.
Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Yeah. Or was it
Spy Kids
3? That's the biggest comparison that film gets.
Yeah, I could see it.
What do you think about that last, everything kind of, it comes to a big clash. Mary Jane, obviously she gets captured again, and Spider-Man needs to throw down on Sandman and Venom because they want to take out Spider-Man. They want to take out Peter Parker, and he goes to Harry to talk about it, to like get him to team up, and which he says no initially. How do you feel about that last fight?
There's things I like about it, and there's things I don't. I think the actual action is great. I think the action is great. Do I think that the Flint Marko that we saw make a sandcastle for his daughter earlier in the film would team up with a guy who's basically an alien just to get Spider-Man? I don't buy it, per se. I think that was kind of a rushed way to finish the film off. But overall, I enjoy the story. There's a lot of it that I just don't personally... It doesn't check off like a box that's like, this makes sense, for me. So the team up of Venom and Sandman just doesn't work for me in this instance. That's not to say that they can't. I'm just saying... Right. Yeah. I didn't buy it.
Right. In this instance, this Flint Marko wouldn't have been like, I want to kill Spider-Man. I just want to kind of incapacitate him, like kind of take him off the board, like send a message, but not in a way that he wants to kill him. Because you see how like quick he wanted to team up with Spider-Man in No Way Home, like what's going on with this guy, right. And then when he thought that Spider-Man hurt Electro, that's when he kind of flipped out. So yeah, I would say that Sandman is more kind of down bad and misunderstood at some points.
He's a very neutral character for the most part.
Right.
Like, he has his own agenda. He's always got his own agenda. He's trying to, help his daughter out. He's trying to do this. He's trying to do that. And he's trying to stay alive.
Right.
He's
like,
not trying to kill anybody.
Anti-villain, right? Like, he's got noble causes, but he might not... He has noble goals, but he goes
justify
about
the means. Yeah.
Right. Like, he, instead of making money in an honest way to, like, help save his daughter, he steals it, Right. So yeah.
But I do love that Harry Osborn comes and has that moment where he's able to reconcile their relationship in that last moment because they were able to work together and save Mary Jane's life. That was a great end for him, I don't have any issue with that.
And then Spider-Man also forgives Flint Marko for what happened with his uncle.
Yeah, forgiveness is a big theme in this movie.
It is.
And I'm happy that you brought that up, because I did think that was a very powerful moment, not only for Peter, but clearly for Flint Marko. That's clearly what he needed. That's clearly something that's been itching him on the inside for the longest time. He killed this poor old man who was trying to do what was right for him,
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, there was that moment when they're fighting in the subway where Spider-Man brings up Ben Parker, and you see that look in his eye, like he knows what it is, and like you could tell it's something that haunts him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really care for the portrayal of Flint Marko in this movie. I think that was probably the strongest part for me. Second would be Harry Osborn's arc coming to a close. And third, I think Venom was rushed into this movie too soon.
Right,
personally.
right. And he left as fast as he came in because he gets killed.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here on Project Geekology for our 54th episode. We hope you enjoyed this retrospective look at the Sam Raimi trilogy. What do you guys want us to check out next? What do you guys want us to talk about next? Hopefully, next time you hear from us, we'll be talking about Mando Season 3. So be nice and prepared for that. We hope to hear your comments wherever we are on social media. You'll find links to all that in our show notes.
And give us a nice 5-star rating.
And give us a nice 5-star rating. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.